Today I want to share with you how to make marinara sauce. You can use fresh tomatoes or you can use canned tomatoes. It couldn't be easier, but it's absolutely delicious. Hi sweet friends, I'm Mary and welcome to Mary's Nest, where I teach traditional cooking skills for making nutrient-dense foods like bone broth, ferment, sourdough, and more. So if you enjoy learning about those things, consider subscribing to my channel and don't forget to click on the little notification bell below. That'll let you know every time I upload a new video. Well, if you've harvested a lot of Italian plum or Italian Roma tomatoes, or you found a nice bunch at the farmer's market and you're wondering what you should do with them, well, marinara sauce is a great thing to make. It's very easy to make, and it's also a very versatile sauce. It's a very chunky sauce and a little thinner than traditional tomato sauce. And it's the way that sailors liked their tomato sauce, hence the name marinara from mariner. Now I'm going to use fresh tomatoes. Now you can certainly use canned tomatoes, and if you can get them, the San Marzano tomatoes are going to be the best. Maybe you even grow San Marzano, or you were able to find them at a farmer's market. If so, definitely grab them. If you are using fresh tomatoes, you're going to want to remove the skins first. And in a previous video, which I'll link to, I show you how to get the skins off of tomatoes very easily. And then I also show you how to turn those tomato skins into very flavorful tomato powder, so nothing goes to waste. You know me, I like a no-waste kitchen. Now the ingredients that you're going to need for this marinara are very simple. You don't need to write anything down though, because if you open the description under this video, I'll have a link to the recipe. Now what I've got here is, I'd say close to about 12 pounds of tomatoes. They were about 48 Italian Roma tomatoes. Then I've got 2 teaspoons of salt. You may need a little extra, you can taste it once it's done. And then I've got a teaspoon of black pepper. And then for a little, I like to add a little spice, I've got a teaspoon of red pepper flakes. Now a good marinara should have a lot of garlic in it. And what I've got here is an entire head of garlic. All these cloves came off one whole head. I might even add a little more. Now let's talk about herbs. Traditionally, what you would do when you were making your marinara is to take some fresh basil and right on the stalk, keeping the leaves right on the stalk, and putting that down into your pan with your cooking tomatoes. But we're really at the end of the season for basil here in Central Texas, and all of mine is flowered and gone to seed. But to be honest with you, I really like oregano in marinara as opposed to basil. And I like to use dried oregano. Now both basil and oregano are relatively mild herbs, but they just add that delightful little bit of flavor that you're really looking for in your marinara. So if you've got fresh basil and you like that, you can definitely use that. If you want to use some dried basil, you can certainly use that. As I said, what I've got here is some oregano. This is dried oregano, and I actually have a tablespoon of dried oregano here. I'm going to put some dried oregano into the pot when we first start cooking the tomatoes, and then I'm going to follow up with a little more if I feel that the flavor is dissipated a little bit. I also like to add in a few bay leaves, but this is completely optional. Next, what you're going to need is some olive oil. And no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm cooking it or using to make salad, dressing, whatever the case may be, I always like to use an extra virgin olive oil. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't really measure when I'm cooking with olive oil, but you're probably going to want a minimum of 1/4 cup of olive oil. You just want to make sure that you have enough olive oil that really allows the garlic to cook very thoroughly, just to golden. You don't want to brown it because it'll get a little bit of an off flavor. But you want to make sure there's enough olive oil in there that will allow the garlic to cook and soften. Now you can cook the garlic any way that you like in your marinara. If you want, you can slice it. If you want, you can chop it up. But what I like to do is get a little mortar and pestle, and I'm going to basically smash all my garlic cloves. I'm going to smash all my garlic cloves with the back of the knife, and then I'm going to go ahead and add them into my mortar and pestle with about a teaspoon of salt. And then I'm just going to mash them. I find that that allows them to really blend, cook well and blend beautifully into the sauce. Now don't throw out the skins from your garlic. You want to add these to your scrap bag for the next time you're making a broth or a bone broth, anything like that. These are very rich in nutrients similar to the garlic. Now what I did was take a teaspoon of my salt and I sprinkled it over the garlic cloves that I had all put into my mortar and pestle here. And then I just started breaking up this garlic, and I'm just going to keep pounding this until it forms a nice paste. I really like doing this instead of slicing it or chopping it. I just find it blends so well and cooks up so nicely. This was my son's favorite job when he was a little boy. He always wanted to do the mortar and pestle. Well, I've got my garlic mashed into a nice paste. It looks terrific. And I'm just going to set that aside for a minute because I want to talk about the tomatoes before we start cooking our garlic. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm using fresh tomatoes, and I'm using tomatoes where the skins have been removed. Now, if you're using canned tomatoes and you want to make the same amount that I'm making, you're going to need 4 of the large cans of the San Marzano or Italian plum tomatoes or Italian Roma tomatoes. I believe those are 28-ounce cans. Now the first thing that I want to do is just cut out this little bit of core right at the top here. I don't want that in my marinara. But you don't have to throw this out. You can throw it in your scrap bag along with the garlic skins. Well, I've got my tomatoes all cleaned up, and now we have the fun part. With clean hands, you just want to get in here and start breaking these up. And you want to leave them nice and chunky. And the nice thing about these Italian plums or Italian Roma tomatoes, and especially the San Marzano, is that they have very few seeds, yet they've got some nice juice to them and also a little bit of meatiness, yet they're tender. And that's what makes them perfect for making a tomato sauce like a marinara. Because this isn't one of those all-day sauces. A marinara can be cooked pretty quickly. Well, I've got my tomatoes all nicely squished up with my hands, and that's something you definitely want to do by hand. Don't do this in a food processor or a blender. It'll just become too chopped up, too almost mushy, and you'll incorporate a lot of air. And you don't want to incorporate air into when you're making a tomato sauce because it turns it more like a pink than a nice deep red. Alrighty, well, I've got my olive oil in my Dutch oven here, and I'm going to go ahead and put this wonderful wad of garlic, and I'll start sauteing this up. Well, I've got my garlic sizzling in this olive oil, and it smells wonderful. I love cooking garlic. And I'm just going to let this get a little golden and a little softened, and then we'll go ahead and add in our tomatoes. Now, what about onion? Can you add chopped onion to a marinara? Definitely. But I find that it's just really not necessary since I like to add a lot of garlic. But that's definitely an option if you want to still have a lot of garlic and then also add in some onion, or if you want to cut back on the garlic and add in a little onion, or a lot of onion. That's definitely an option. Alrighty, well, I've just sauteed this garlic for about 2 minutes just to get it a little softened and a little fragrant. You want to be very careful. You don't want it to get brown. It would get an off taste and everything would need to be discarded. And you definitely don't want to have to do that. Now I'm going to go ahead and carefully add in these tomatoes. Now I've got those tomatoes added in. Next, what I'm going to do is take about a cup of water. Again, it's not an exact science. And I'm just going to swirl my bowl here and go ahead and add that right in. Because a marinara should be on the looser side. And so you want to make sure you have plenty of liquid in here. Now I'm going to go ahead and put in the rest of my salt and my black pepper and my red pepper flakes. Next, I'm going to put in just about a teaspoon of my dried oregano and my 2 bay leaves. Give everything a stir around, and we'll bring this up to a boil. Well, as you bring this up to a boil, really, and I guess I should really say like a high simmer. You want to see some bubbling, and the minute you see that, what you want to do is you want to keep stirring, because again, we don't want anything to burn. We don't want anything sticking to the bottom. What you'll want to do is turn this down to a medium to medium low simmer, and then put the lid on and just let this simmer for about 45 minutes if you're using the canned tomatoes. Since we started with fresh tomatoes, I'll probably give it at least another 15 minutes of simmer time. Well, I let this marinara simmer for about an hour, and it smells wonderful. The aroma, oh, so inviting, and it's beautifully chunky. You're going to love this. Now, this is going to be the best sauce, obviously, for your spaghetti marinara, but you could also put this over some sauteed chicken breasts. You could add a little bit of this to a soup or a stew. It's just so versatile and so flavorful. You can mix it with any kind of pasta, and it comes together quickly. And oh, just so flavorful, and I love all the chunks. And you know what's nice about this too, that since this has no meat in it, this really can be useful to serve everybody, you know, your friends and your family if you have any vegetarians, and I think it might also be okay for vegans. But let's give this a taste. Look at this. Oh, it just looks luscious. Oh, it's nice and hot. Oh, that is wonderful, and I love that we use the fresh tomatoes. The fresh tomato taste really shines through. You know, that is so tasty. I don't even think I'm going to add in any additional oregano. It's so perfect the way it is right now. Now, if you'd like to learn how to make more recipes using tomatoes, like those candy tomatoes I mentioned earlier, along with a very easy tomato sauce that you do with a food mill, and a whole host of other things, including a fermented salsa, be sure to click on this video over here where I have a wonderful playlist, and I'll see you over there in my Texas Hill Country Kitchen. Love and God bless.